During a search of Avondale Lockhart's home, federal agents found more than 15,000 images and 9 videos of child pornography. Lockhart pled guilty in federal court to possession of child pornography, and he was sentenced under a statute that requires a 10-year mandatory minimum for defendants who possess child pornography and who have certain prior convictions. At its heart, this case is really a case about statutory construction. It's an argument between the government and Lockhart about which of the different rules of statutory construction ought to apply. So the statute in this case ordinarily provides for up to 10 years in prison, but if a defendant has certain prior convictions, then the person shall be sentenced to no less than 10 years and no more than 20 years in prison. The rule of the last antecedent is a rule that says if you have a word or a phrase that modifies some piece of a statute, it should be read to modify only that part of the statute that comes immediately before the modifier. So imagine that I say to you, I would like to reserve a room with a king-size bed or a queen-size bed with a fireplace. The rule of the last antecedent would say, I want to reserve either a king-size room without a fireplace or a queen-sized room with a fireplace. If the Supreme Court decides to apply the rule of the last antecedent, then Lockhart's going to lose. The series qualifier canon is a rule of statutory interpretation that tells us if you have a list of things and then you have a word or a phrase either at the beginning or the end of that list, then we read that word or phrase to modify all of the items in the list. So in cases like this where we have conflicting canons of statutory interpretation, the court can do a few different things. First of all, what it will probably do is it will look at the rules that the court itself has come up with in deciding when these different canons of statutory interpretation apply. It's possible that in this case, the Supreme Court will conclude that this statute is ambiguous. And if it concludes that the statute is ambiguous, then it may turn to the rule of lenity. The court only uses the rule of lenity when all else fails. If the text of the statute, if the rules of statutory construction, if the legislative history, if the structure and the pattern of the rest of the statute, if none of those things can help the court resolve what this statute means, then the court may say that the statute is ambiguous. Then the rule of lenity tells the court that it has to interpret the statute in the way that's most favorable to the defendant.